Greetings to you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Shexa's YouTube channel. Please like if you truly like the content that I am uploading on this channel. Comment, give me suggestions, give me your comments, positive comments or any kind of comment. Share if you think that this content is relevant for somebody that you know, and most importantly, subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you do not miss out any new video that I upload on this YouTube channel. So to start with, I'm sure that we have talked about database keys, and I've provided a lot of examples. And if you feel that I've left out some items or concepts that you need clarification on, please make sure you drop a comment in the comment section. And if you haven't watched the previous video tutorial, you can access it through the link that I have provided in the description, or you can click on the link that is appearing on top right corner here. If it's not appearing right now, keep on checking this top right corner for the link of the previous lecture where we talked about database keys. And today I'm sure we're going to cover both SQL data insertion and deletion, and the other thing that we're going to cover is SQL data updates. So today we might have two sections. The first one covering both data insertion and deletion, and then the third one, the second section, will be covering SQL data updates. So stay tuned for part 4, that will be looking at SQL database, SQL data updates. So in this essence, I might call it part 3B, because part 3C. So database keys being part 3A, SQL data insertion and deletion being part 3B, and then SQL data updates being part 3C. So I'm having this as part 3, but part 3 is sectioned into 3 sections as well. So that's what we're going to cover. So if once we are done with SQL data insertion and deletion, we might have a small break, and then we get to SQL data updates through another link. If we fail to have the third section of this third part of this series, we might have it on another day, but I think we must have it today. So what we're going to do today is the insertion of data into the database. So I just picked one of the slides from video tutorial number 1. So this is the table that we have, tracks table, and for instance, or in our case, we are managing tracks, but we have drivers, we have more entities that we have in our database. So the first thing to take note of is that we cannot manage tracks without tracks. As of now, everybody is having a database called track management database, which is having a lot of a number of tables or a number of relations representing entities, and these relations, they need to have data. These are the records that we're going to put. So these are the records, as if you remember from our first video tutorial, and this is the tuple, and this is another tuple that we have. So we have two records. These are the records that we have. So what we're going to do, we're going to jump from this side, going to we go back to workbench. So we're going to open workbench and insert this data into our database table using SQL commands. right? So what you need to note is the data type and how we insert the value for that column, which was defined with a certain data type. For instance, we have mileage. I'm sure this mileage is of data type float, if not double. And then we have service. Service, it must be variable character and other, maybe, if not mistaken, all of the remaining columns are defined with variable character or varying characters as the data type. So you will notice how it differs when we are inserting the values into the database columns. So let's open our workbench. Let's open our workbench. 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 I'm opening Word instead of workbench. Where is it in this work? Right, this one. So that's what you want to have. So this is our workbench. Right, we'll open our connection. So this is our connection. So before we start, what you can do is to make sure that you are with us, or you are following and you have everything that everybody is having. You may download SQL query 1, that is track management DB creation 1, and track management DB creation 2, and then you download part 3, which is going to be which is relevant for what we did previously. And then the query that we're going to create today is the one that we're going to call part 3b. And then if we succeed to have part 3c today, we shall name it as part 3c. So you just download this, and then you click on file, then you open SQL script, then you open the SQL, this one, and then you go to 2, you open this one, you click on open, then you execute it. After you execute it, you execute the second one, and then you execute the third one. After executing the third one, then you'll be sure that everything that you'll be doing here on a new query tab is gonna be successfully inserted into the database or deleted from the database. So that's what we are going to do today. So the first thing is we need to start with what? We need to start with the tracks table, is illustrated from here. Is illustrated from our slide here. So we have these records. So these are the records that you want to add into the database. So this is what we do. So we want to insert into each table. So the first thing is use track management DB, and the terminal. You execute that one so that you select that database, and then you can open and say, as I'm inserting data into this table, let me have a view of my database table structure. So you can start now to insert data into this what do you call it, into this table. So we start typing our commands. Right, so the first thing, I need to give you some comments. So here what we'll be doing, the first thing is inserting data into inserting single rows of data. So we'll be inserting one row at a time. So what do we do? Is just say insert into, and you must be sure that insert exists within which type of language, data definition, data manipulation, or is data control language, or any, or is it any other type of language. So we're inserting into what? We are inserting our data into table called tracks. Insert into tracks. And what do you want to insert? So what comes into the brackets are the columns that you want to put the data. So since these are individual columns, or a set of selected columns to have values, so you need to make sure that the columns that you put in these curved brackets are the columns that you have values for, and these are the columns that that are defined as columns that must not have now values. By that I mean those columns that you define, that is defined as not now, or with not now constraint. If you omit those columns, you will receive an error and you fail to insert the values. So the first column is range num. You separate the columns by a comma. You say make, and then model, and then service, and then mileage. I'm not remembering this from yet. I'm copying from the structure of the table that is appearing at our left bottom corner. Then mileage, then you say color, and then you say VIN, vehicle identification number, and then after that you go down there and then say the values. So you see what is happening here. So inside the curved brackets, you now put the values in the same order. So you started with the reg number, so the value for the reg number is the first value, and then you put a comma, and then you go. So what are the values that we have for this? What are the values that we have? We have A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and our reg number is of data type variable character, so it goes inside double quotes or single quote. So here we say A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4, we close. So this is the value for reg number, and then the value for make is, let's just say Toyota. So we say Toyota, and then let me check the value for model Corolla. So Corolla is the model. Then from the model we go to service. Is it serviced or not? Let's just say, I don't remember, is it serviced? Yes, it's serviced. So you just say serviced here, and then you put a comma. From serviced, its mileage is 35,007. So we open back 35,007, 35,000 is this like this. Let me check. Right, 35,007, right? That's it. So that's it. So you can see that a numeric value is inserted as it is, without any quotes or any special characters. But here we have the double quotes here, So you have to make sure that if you open with this double quote, you close with the double quote. If you open with a single quote like this, you need to close with a single quote. And if you execute, so this quote is taking characters, variable characters or varying characters. Same applies with this quote, double quote. So that's what we have. Let's try to run it and check if we are going to have successful run. Column count does not match value count. Exactly. So what is this? It means, what is this error? So I'll read the error loud so that you can hear and learn from this. I will tell you why we have this error. It's saying column count does not match value count at row 1. So what is happening is, how many columns do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And how many values? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What about the other 2? So serviced, mileage, we have it there. What about color? So we need to have color here. Let me just say color is, so from what we have done, from what we have done earlier, color, let me check from the so here we have our color is, we don't have color there. This is our original database table without the additional 2 columns. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put the color, let's just say red, and then from red vin we can choose a random value for vin, vehicle registration number, vehicle identification number, sorry. Then here we can put let's just say AD1234, and then have it like that. If you try to run it, let me zoom it in so that you can see the whole statements. Right, like this, you can see that we now have matching values, values that are matching with column number. So that's it. If you try to execute it, then you must not have an error. It has been executed successfully, and only one row was affected. Only one row was affected. So if you want to add another row or another record, we just need to change the values here, or we just need to comment this and start to write it again, say insert. So you see, this is time consuming because you will be taking more time and you will be writing more statements. I will show you another way of doing this. So insert into tracks, and then you put the values, you put the columns, and then you put the values, terminate. So the columns that you want, they are reg. So I want to show you something here to say if what will happen if I miss another column that is tagged as primary key or as not now. So let me select not now, right now here, and then make, and then model, and then service, and then mileage, and then color. So I want to omit color intentionally and put and VIN as well, so that you will learn from this. We will learn from this error, right? So we are creating errors for us to learn. I think that's the best way to learn these things. We can master them doing it this way. So you have an error, you will get the error, and I will describe or explain the meaning of the error to you and how to correct such an error. So here we put the value for what? For our region, and in this case is CBA 43214321, and then the value for make, this time it's Wonder. So this time I want to use only single quotes. So this one is CBA 4321, and then the make is a Wonder. So it doesn't matter whether you say module comes first. Maybe let's just do it this way. If you say module comes first, you need to make sure that the module comes first as well. So it's a fit, then which is just made by Wonder, and then service, this one is not serviced. Not minority is not the correct one, not serviced. And then mileage 20,000, so it must be a proper value, and then that's what I have chosen to insert. So if I try to run it, it must show me an error. Field V in vehicle identification number does not have a default value. So you get why we require to have default constraint. If we do not provide a value for that column, then a default value will be inserted. However, in this case, if it was to be inserted, it could be inserted only for the first record to be inserted without putting the value. But if we insert it, if we insert it for the first time with a default value, if let's say we have a default value or default constraint defined for this column, then for the first record is going to be inserted, but for the second it's going to be rejected, and we're going to have an error because this is a primary key which does not allow repeated values. So that's why it's gonna be rejected, and we have an error for that. So let's just put V in here. Let's put V in, and then put the V in value. Let's get whatever value that we want. Let's say so the value for V in, you can put JC true, can just guess any value, but you need to get the actual value from the vehicle manufacturer. Right, so we now have our what? We now have the value for V in. You will see that it's going to be executed successfully without giving us an error. Why? Because why not giving us an error if we have left the value for color? We don't have color here. So the answer is that let me try to run it and see if it's going to execute. So it has been executed and one row was inserted. So we now have two rows. We will need to check that, but the value for color is not there. What value do we have? It's a null value because we didn't provide any value. So you will see now in that column. So let's just run. Let's have this commented out. Let's have this commented out, and then run a select all columns from tracks. terminate. So that's the query that we want to run. So here, what do we want to see? We want to see the records that we have inserted. So these are the records. Let me close this window, this panel, and the bottom panel as well. Right, so these are the records that we have. So these are the records, the reg number that we have inserted. So this is what we've inserted here, and then Toyota, that's it, this one, which is that one. Then Corolla, that's this one. Serviced, this one, that and that. Then color, red, then there. So on the second record we have CBA, which is that one. Fit, that's this one, and then Honda, that's this one. You see, the order that you put in your query command is the one that determines the output, but it doesn't matter. You just need to make sure that the order of columns is matching the order of values. Then we say service, not serviced. Then mileage, 20,000. Then you can see that here we have a now value. We don't have any value. It's a now here. Right, that's what we have. It's a now value. So if you do not provide a value for this column, or for all the columns that that do not have not now constraint, we have a now inserted in that table column. And then vehicle identification number, we have it at the end there. So you can see that for the next record we already have the now values. So if you try to omit a value here, it will say the now value is not allowed, then it will give you an error. So that's how we do insert the values. So we need to insert more values. So more values for other tables or other relations. So let's open the left window, and then we have inserted in tracks. Let's now, so you need to make sure that you know the order in which you are going to enter the data or record the data, because we do not want to violate some constraints that we have enforced earlier when we were creating the database. So you need to make sure that you start by populating the primary tables, and then the child or the primary or the parent tables, and then later you populate the child tables. And I'm sure that you know this. And then next, what do? We create drivers. We record data for drivers. So we say, so we now know how to insert one record at a time. So what we want to do right now is to insert data into, so we want to insert into drivers, and we want to insert which columns. So I just do this so that I do not miss these things or forget it. I just know that I'm now putting the column names. So I need to click on column drivers, so that on drivers table, so that all the columns are right in front of me and I won't miss any. ID, num, these are the columns that I want to put info. First name, and then last name. From last name we have phone, and then from phone we have email address, and then from there we have home address. All right, so that's what we want to have here. And then now we go to what, the values, the ID number for the driver. Let's just guess any value. Let's just put what value can we put in there? And just say 09, 1 2 3 4 5 6 and y34. So that's the value for this. And then first name is Shexa, and then second name is Martin, and then phone is plus 26377634553. So that's the phone number. And then from the phone number we have the email address. So email address is what? shexab@gmail.com. And then from shexab.com we have home address. So we can say is 345 Kanu Chennai Zim. Close that one. So that's this. Let me just run this so that you can see the whole sentence. So let me just remove this panel. So that's the insert query that we have just written, right? So but since we want more than one value, one record, what we can do is we can write another set of values. So instead of putting a semicolon here, we can put a comma and then put another set of values. So these are the values. So you can say dot and then we say 08234 T. You can put any, but make sure that the values that you are putting in here, they match the values that we are having here, so that when we start to debug, if you send an error, I may also cross-check with what I have done here, so it becomes easy. But if you choose to use your own values, then that's not a problem. But if you try to debug it with someone else, that someone else may have may need to check with his work, or might need to be somebody who is well versed with databases and these SQL queries. And then the first name we put let me put Ian, and then the surname is Jackson, Ian Jackson. Then from Ian Jackson we have a phone number, which is plus 27 then close that. Then we have the email address, Ian, which is Ian at cat.ac.cw. Then close. Then we get the address. And then let's say this one is in Harare, so it's 34 Malta Road, Hetfield, Harare. So you see that's why we want to have a data type that can take more values here, because we have long text. So you can execute this and observe that. So before we do that, let's just check the values that we have. Select all columns from drivers. So I want to check this before I run this, so I can comment this and then run only this to check the values that I have. We have an error in the syntax. What's the error? That corresponds to what? It's saying elect. Okay, it's because I ran it while selecting a portion. So you can see that this table is having no values, doesn't have any record. So I can now uncomment this and run it. Then after running it, it's because here is showing nothing because I didn't run this query after. So you might be asked that after running this selected query statements, the output that was shown is this. Why is it that the output is not showing the values that we inserted? What could be your answer from there? So you need to know that this select query was run before we insert. That's why we do not have any results. So you need to run it again here, and then if you try to run it with this, it's going to give you an error because this value is already inserted. So it will try to insert it once again and find that it already exists. So it will give you an error to say a duplicate ID number, this and that, since they are being executed at once. So we'll need to comment these statements and then execute this one so that we observe the changes. We can run that and you observe the values here. Here are the values. ID num, the one that we have inserted here, and the second one. So you observe that we have 76, 34, Shexa, and that and that and that. And somebody might say, why is it that we have 08 as the first value? It's sorting the data itself. So it doesn't matter the order you insert. Once you insert, the database itself can sort the data according to preset settings of sorting the records. So we have inserted our 2 records. Let's now go and insert in the third table. So some things that I think are important, I will highlight them here. Let me highlight the things that I think are important. Let me open. Right, so let me open this document so that you can see. So these are the tables that we have, right? So we have inserted values into this, and we have inserted values into that. So these are the first level primary tables that we have. First level primary tables that we have, trucks and drivers, right? And then these 2 tables, they do not depend on any other table. So that's why we're calling them primary tables or parent tables. Right. Now what we need to do, we cannot create this table first before creating this one. Why? Because the value, yes, creating as well as inserting values. So we cannot insert a value for trips if we do not have a driver assigned to a certain vehicle, because a trip is taken by a driver who is having a certain vehicle or who is assigned to a certain vehicle. So we need to insert values into this and that first, and then insert values into this, and then later on into that one. So you need to note all these things. So let's now insert values into, so you can see the order. We start with trucks, and drivers, and you can also start with the drivers and then go to trucks. No problem if you interchange that. But in terms of these primary tables, it's obvious, and you cannot change it. We will start with truck driver and then lastly go to trips. We cannot start to insert trips first before we insert truck driver, because we are not allowed to have a null value for TDID, which is a foreign key. That is a primary key in truck driver table. So let's do the insertion. Let me close this bottom view. Close that one. Right. So let's do it. Let me comment this and that as well. Yes, right. So that's what you have. Let me open the output here. So that's what you have. Just trying to zoom in so that you can see what we are typing here. Now we want to insert values into what? Into truck drivers. So we now know how to do this. So here I'm going to insert a lot of data into this. Let me just put two records. So we say insert into TDID, sorry, into truck. I don't know what I'm thinking about. Truck driver table, and these are the columns and these are the values. Right, we have TDID. This one you need to note this as well. I can give you a comment here. So we are not allowed to provide values or value for table columns. For table columns with auto increment. So we have auto increment on TDID here, so we don't need to specify the value for that column. So we can start with driver ID now, and then the next value is, the next column is truck reg now. So these are the two columns that we want to populate. So what are we going to do? Since we have driver ID num and truck reg num as foreign keys in this, we need to check the values that we have used earlier. So this is the ID number for the driver. So we select the ID number and then we put it there because it exists. If you put a value that does not exist, then you will get an error automatically. So this driver is being assigned to which vehicle? To this vehicle. Is being assigned to this vehicle here. And then we have two drivers, right? So the other driver is going to be assigned to, so the second driver is this one, being assigned to a certain vehicle, which is the one. So that's the vehicle. So we are now assigning. So let me just put in an additional record which is having an error. So if you do not want to have an error, you can leave this on. You can put it that way. And then we do not have any driver with this this ID number. And if you try to run it, it means you're going to get an error. Let's try to run it. Yes, cannot add or update a child row. A foreign key constraint fails because this one does not exist. You do not have such a driver, so you need to remove this and then try again here. Now 2 rows affected. You get it? Now if you want to check, you can say select all columns. Select all columns from track driver and run that. And just comment this because it's going to give us an error if you try to rerun it again. So let me just comment it and run this query. So run it like that. We have 2 rows retained. So that's it. We have this driver given this vehicle, this driver assigned to this vehicle. So these are the 2 drivers that we have and the 2 vehicles that we have, right? So after this, we can now have trips. We can now have trips records. So this must also be the same order that the application that depends on this database is going to run. That's the order. You start by recording the driver or the truck. From there, you assign a driver to a vehicle. From there, you start to record the trips, and then maybe a fuel is now being added into the system, and you can say this driver has spent so much fuel, this driver has gone from this source to this destination. So I think we are done with truck driver table. So we can now work with trips. So let's just comment this. Let's just comment this column, this command here, and start to write something here. So what is it that I'm going to start doing here? We'll say insert, and insert into what? Insert into trips. And what are we going to insert into trips? Setting values. So that's how it goes. Right, trips. We have our trips going in there. TID, that is trip ID, is auto increment. So it's going to give us values like what we have seen here. Here we are having 4 and 5, but you are supposed to have 1 and 2. You are supposed to have 1 and 2 because here it's having 4 and 5 because I've inserted some 3 records earlier and I've deleted those values. That's why I'm having 4 and 5 here. So that's it for me here. Right, so next is the trips. Insert into trips. I will omit TID because the value is going to be automatically inserted. And then T source. So I specify that I want value for source, I want value for tests, I want value for depart date, I want value for return date, and I want value for amount of fuel, I want value for truck driver ID. And then the values are here. Let's just say this trip is a Harare trip. So this is from Harare to Botswana. Let me just put Botswana there. and then from Botswana, so that's the source and destination. And depart date, let's say depart date is today, so we can say now. So now is a function which retain the current date, so we just say now if we want to specify a certain date, we need to be very careful there, because we need to know the format of the data that we want to insert. We need to know the format of our date. So on date, you will see what you are supposed to do. You need to convert a string value into date value. You need to change a string into date. So what do? We can use a function. We can use a function called string to date, which converts a string to date. So it goes like this. You can say it's str string to date. There it goes. So that's the function that you can use. So here, this is the function as well, which retrieves or gives us the current date. It gets this data from the system, and then we are converting a certain string that is, maybe we are saying it's 9. So it's from today, and returning on, let's say it's returning on 28 April 2021. So let's just remove this one here, and then you give it the format to say, I want this to be in the form of let me try to zoom this so that you can see. Let me remove this one and that one and zoom it out like that. Right, so you say, I want the day or the date first, and then from there I want month, and then from there I want year. So you close the bracket, the quote. So that's it, like that. It's not the date that we've inserted. This is this one. So that's the date, and then retain, that's the retain date, and then the amount of fuel. You can see that the values that we are inserting, they differ in the way we insert them. So you need to be very careful. And then let's just say fuel is 200. So we have it like that. And then TDID, that is the trip truck driver ID. So in our case we have 4 and 5. In your case you have 1 and 2, if you haven't inserted anything and deleted it. So what you need to do is you need to put an existing TDID value. So in my case I will put 4. So let's just assume I've made a mistake and put let me just say I've put 7. Try to put 7 if you want to have the same error like what I'm going to have. And then if you try to run it, you see that we have an error: cannot add or update a child, a foreign key constraint fails. So I need to put 4 there, so that I know that this is the driver that is going to Botswana from Harare. And then I try to execute this one. It's executing, but it's having an error. What's the error there? It's having a warning. Incorrect date value 2021 that for column depart date. Depart date is now. it's now. So let's just test and let's just check whether we have successfully inserted it or not. But definitely we have inserted it, since we just got a warning. Let's select all columns from trips, and let's execute this and check. So we have it. What's today's date? Is depart date, it took 12/04 and that. So that's the date that I have on my system. It's telling us that today is 12th. So if I correct my date, it's going to pick the correct date here. So that's what happens. So if you want to put a specific date here, you can still use this formula, but this function. But this is not the only function that we have to deal with this kind of date data type. You can still have you can still use more functions that are available. So that's it for the trips. Let's just add another trip. Let's just add another trip. I can just copy that and then comment that, go down and paste this, and then from there we can uncomment this. Uncommenting, you just repeat Control /. If you want to comment it, you select it and then click Control +/. So let's say I want the depart date to be something else, so that I don't get an error. Let's just put 20. Let me put 15 here, and then the return date, I don't know why I'm using that value. Let me put 15 to 23, and the trip changes from Harare to what? To Chennai. So I think we have defined the default value for source. So I may fail to, let me just leave it without a value and check what will happen. Right, so let me try to run this, and then after that I can check the values that I have inserted. Let me execute that. 2 rows inserted. So let me check the value that has been inserted on source. So Chino has been inserted on source, but I didn't type it. So since it was a default value, it is the one that was inserted as the source here. And then truck driver is this 4 as well, but I don't want that to happen. So I want to delete this record. So what can I do? What I can do is I can say delete from trips where TID is equals to 3. So I can execute that. Let me just comment this. Let me comment that, and then drag this one down. Let me have that. Once I delete it, I want to see the result. So let's execute it. Right, so I now have this, and I now need to instead of doing what we have done, that is deleting and now inserting again, you can update it. But since we are going to cover updates, record updates and data modification in the next section, then I have decided to do a delete, because it's also helping us to understand the delete command. So we run that, and then here we can comment it. We can comment it here, then insert that we can have this uncommented. So let's see, it's commented twice, so let's do that, and just highlight it from the side, and then control slash. So it's no longer highlighted. So here we do not have Chinoi, and then here I want to put 5 here. I'm sure that's what we have, and then run it. It's done. So we have it like that. So later on we'll update and change some values from our in our database. So we have successfully inserted values into our table. So your task is to go and insert our values for users table. We have users table here, insert values, and try to experiment deleting some values or omitting some column values as you do your practice. So let me check if right, so that's what we have